and welcome to the Kiki London YouTube channel. My name's Amanda, and in today's video we're going to be doing a cherry blossom gel polish design, so I really hope you all enjoy watching. Of course, if you do enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up or leave a comment below. I have already applied and cured my rubber base coat, so we're jumping straight into the design today. And the colours I'm going to be using on this first now are Fiji Water, I absolutely love this one, and Coconut. So I'm going to be doing an ombre between these two colours. So of course, to do that ombre, I'm going to be using my Kiki London ombre brush. This brush just makes ombres absolutely effortless. Now on this particular ombre, I wanted to have Fiji Water at the cuticle area, then Coconut in the center, and then Fiji Water again at the tip of the nail, just because I felt as though this would create a really soft and pretty base for my cherry blossom design. So as you can see, I'm coming in and applying a really thin first coat of color. I'm trying to make sure that the color touches the previous color, so do make sure that you check your gel polish brush before you pop it back into the bottle so that you've got none of the previous gel polish color on there. And then we're going to take our ombre brush and ombre these two colours together. So I'm focusing on that line where the coconut meets the Fiji Waters, and then I'm taking that up into the Fiji Water, because at this point I didn't want the Fiji Water to overpower the white too much, because I was kind of just playing around to see how it looked and what kind of effect that I could create. I do end up then coming over the white a little bit more just to soften it ever so slightly, because we don't want to lose that super bright white crisp in the center of the nail. So here you can see I'm just going backwards and forwards until I'm happy with how the colours blend. The coconut and the Fiji Water blended together really, really well. They made this soft mint colour that was between the white and the Fiji Waters. Now I'm going to let that colour, or let that first coat sit for a few seconds before I pop it into cure, and then I'm going to pop it into cure for 30 seconds, and we're going to come in and repeat the process. Now when you're doing anything gel polish wise, do not worry how that first coat of colour looks. You get your full pigmentation when you come in and apply the second coat of colour. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. Now at this point I decided I wanted there to be a little bit more of the white, because when you blend it together you are losing a section of that white. So I applied the white in a slightly larger section when it comes to doing the second coat of colour, but then I'm going to repeat that exact same process. So I'm starting off by blending the two colours together. Now when it comes to doing the second coat of colour, I be a little bit more careful. I pay a little bit more attention to make sure I'm creating a nice neat ombre, because it doesn't matter so much on the first coat, but obviously the second coat of colour is what you're going to be seeing. So as you can see, I'm just going backwards and forwards. I'm taking some of the white into the Fiji Waters, and then I'm coming over the entire white just to soften it ever so slightly. And like I said, these colours did blend together quite effortlessly, but I'm just going backwards and forwards until I'm happy with how the colour and the fade looks. Now it does look as though I'm working quite fast with my brush, but that's because the video has been sped up. But if you was working on a client, you would just work a little bit more careful just so you don't hit the skin or the side walls. Then I always leave the colour to sit for a minute or two just before popping that into cure, just to minimise those brush strokes. Then I'm going to come in with my Kiki London No White Matte Top Coat, and I'm going to apply a layer of this. Now I'm coming in with the matte top coat, one because it's going to smooth out any of those brush strokes and you can see the full ombre effect, and two, I went for a matte top coat because I'm going to be coming in and hand painting, and I find it a lot easier to hand paint over a matte surface. I then did exactly the same on another nail because I wanted two nails in this set to have that ombre base. So that's what both of those nails look like. We are now going to move on to some of the hand painting in the design. So I'm coming in with the gorgeous Caramel Swirl. This is such a lovely softer brown. I went for this one rather than a black because I wanted this whole design to look quite soft, and I'm going to be applying this using the stripe liner brush. Jumping back to the brown, if you didn't have this in your collection or if you were going for a different effect, you could also do this step with a darker brown or even a black. To begin with, I'm going to load up my brush. So I like to run it through the gel polish a few times, just run it out on my palette, just to make sure that the gel polish has coated all of the bristles and that there's a generous amount running through the bristles without there being an excess amount on the brush. Then I'm going to come in and start drawing on the branches for my cherry blossom tree. Now, I wanted the branches to go across 2 nails, but most of them to be on this nail. So I'm just taking it off of the nail slightly so I can match this up on the second nail. But that main branch is going to be, or sorry, that first branch is going to be the main branch of our design. Then I'm just coming down to the side of the nail, as in that would just be a part of the tree trunk. I'm just keeping that nice and thin because I didn't want there to be too much of that showing on the nail. And then I'm simply coming in and drawing on some more branches, and I'm going to have some slightly thicker than others and some quite thin. And that's one of the things I love about the stripe liner brush. It's a super thin nail art brush. However, if you apply a little bit more pressure with it, you're going to create thicker lines, and if you work with it quite lightly, you're going to create thinner lines. So you can see here I'm doing some super thin lines with the very tip of the brush. Now, I would recommend if you were doing this to flash cure as you go. So every couple of lines or every couple of branches that you've drawn on, pop them in your LED lamp for a flash cure just to freeze them in place. I do believe I do it now and then, but I don't show it in the video. It's just sort of when I feel as though I'm happy with how the design's looking, I'll pop it in for a 10-second flash cure so that then if I make any mistakes, I can rub them off without rubbing off any of the lines that I am happy with. As you can see, I'm just continuing to draw on a few more thin branches. I didn't want there to be too many because we have still got to paint on those cherry blossoms. Now what I'm going to do is I've got my second nail that I've done that ombre design on, and I'm just drawing on 2 little lines to where those branches will meet up onto the previous nail, just because I want this to flow across on to that next nail. Then what I'm going to do is load up my brush with a little bit more gel polish and continue creating the branches. So I didn't want there to be too many on this particular nail, but I just wanted it to flow across enough that you could still see some more of the design. Again, I'm just coming backwards and forwards and matching those up until I'm happy with them. I wanted these to be the main 2 branches, so I'm just coming over them and thickening them up a little bit. And then I'm going to come on and paint on some more of the thinner branches. I kind of went with a thick branch and then a medium branch and then added on some thinner ones. To be honest, I wasn't 100% sure how these should look. I'd had a little look on Pinterest, but there were so many different ones to choose from. I kind of ended up just winging it when it came to doing this set myself. Now I'm just going to come in and apply the last few branches to this nail. Now I'm not overly confident when it comes to hand painting, to be honest. It's definitely something that I need a lot more practice in. But one of the things I have found is when I'm working with the stripe liner brush is it does a lot of the work for you. I like to apply a small amount of gel polish because that way I feel as though I've got more control over the product. And then I make contact between the tip of the brush and the nail, and then I'm just guiding the brush to where I want it to go. I find the less you overthink it, the easier it ends up being, but I know that can be a little bit tricky, especially as a beginner. I then popped those 2 nails that we drew the branches on in to cure for 30 seconds, and we're now going to move on to painting on our cherry blossoms. So I wanted to use 3 different colours for these, so I'm going to come in with Flamingo Pink, which is slightly darker. It's such a gorgeous summer pink shade, but then I wanted a combination of a darker pink and a lighter pink, so I'm also going to come in with this super pretty pink, which is Baby Pink. This is one that's absolutely beautiful for the spring, by the way. And then for the centers of my flowers, I wanted to add a little bit of white. So I'm going to use coconut again for that, which is what we used when we were creating our ombre. Now, Kiki London do also have another white available, which is a French white, and that one's slightly softer than this one. So you can also use that one if you have that in your collection. And then to apply my cherry blossoms, I'm going to be using the 01 detail brush because this has a really thin tip to it. It's a really short, compact brush, so it's great for drawing on small intricate parts of your nail art designs. So to begin with, I'm just creating a really, I kind of want to say messy circle shape. It's a round shape, but we're not creating a super crisp circle, if that makes sense. You want them to be a little bit uneven. So yeah, an uneven circle shape. Now I'm painting these on with the Flamingo, and then I'm going to leave these wet. So I'm building up the colour a little bit thicker. I don't want it to be too thin because we're going to leave them wet and then swirl the lighter pink into them. So you can see again here I apply a small amount of the Flamingo and just create a wonky circle shape. keeping a lot of the product in the center because, like I said, we're going to swirl that lighter color into it. Now you don't have to do 2 colors in this, you could, or 3 colors, you could just do the one, but I wanted there to be a little bit more detail to the flowers, so that's why I come in with the lighter pink in a mauve as well. And also another thing to bear in mind is when you're creating designs like this, you can do as many or as little flowers as you please. Now I have left the Flamingo gel polish uncured, so it's still wet, and then I've switched to the stripe liner brush because that has an even thinner tip, and then I'm dipping into the baby pink and I'm just swirling it into the wet Flamingo, and it kind of creates a bit of a marble effect. You don't want to over swirl it because the 2 colours will then just mix together and create a different colour. You want to just use a really quick light touch, just swirl them together, get a little bit of definition, and then move on to the next one. And I just thought this was a really simple way of creating a flower. Because they are quite small, it would be quite tricky to get 2 defined lines anyway. So doing it this way, you get the pop of 2 colours, but they are really easy to do. Now that I've done the first step on my flowers, I'm going to pop that first one into cure and do exactly the same on the second nail. I am going to jump back in and add the white. I wanted to add the white once the 2 pinks had cured and add a few more little details, but I wanted to get that first nail cured before doing that because, again, I didn't want the colours to run together too much. So I'm going to move on and do exactly the same again on this nail. So we're starting off with the detail brush and just drawing on those uneven circular shapes. Also, you don't have to keep the cherry blossoms on the branches. After I'd finished this design, I kind of had the idea that it would have been nice to do some cherry blossoms coming away from the branches so they look like they've blown off, or some down on the tip of the nail so they look like they've fallen on the ground. But I didn't think that, or I didn't think of that at the time of doing the set. So I've now switched back to the striped liner brush and the baby pink, and again I'm just swirling that in to create a little bit more definition in those flowers. Also, I've not completely covered the branches in these larger cherry blossom flowers because I wanted to come in and just dot on some of the flamingo and the baby pink to create smaller petals and smaller flowers, so that's why it does still look a little bit bare at this point. I then pop that nail into cure for 30 seconds and I'm going to jump back to the first nail to finish the design off. So to begin with, I'm using my detail brush like a dotting tool, and I've dipped into the coconut and I'm just dotting that down in the center of the flowers. Now I did feel as though this looked a little bit too harsh. The white just stood out a little bit too much. So after I finished adding some more petals on, I do come back and blend the white out a little bit. But to add on these smaller flowers, I'm just again using my detail brush like a dotting tool and simply dotting on the flamingo and the baby pink just to fill out the tree a little bit more and to make it look like there's more flowers there. Then what I'm doing is I'm taking that detail brush and I'm just rubbing into the coconut a little bit just to blend it out ever so slightly so it doesn't look like a huge harsh white dot there. Then I pop that nail into cure, and whilst that's curing I'm going to do exactly the same on this nail. So I did this the same, I just applied the white to begin with, let it sit for a minute because that's going to make it run a little bit anyway, and then it's going to be easier to blend out. Then I'm just dotting on the baby pink and the flamingo just to add a few more petals. And I felt as though this looked like a really pretty spring design. I have done it on quite long nails as I was working on display tips, but this is definitely something you could do on shorter nails or medium length nails as well. You just would make smaller branches and not do as many, and then same again for the flowers, you do them smaller and not do as many. Now that's our 2 cherry blossom nails done. I really loved how the pink looked against the Fiji Water's background, but you could obviously do any soft colour or any pastel colour background and I think it would look really pretty. The Fiji Waters just kind of gave off a bit of a sky vibe. So on to the next nail, I'm going to do a full nail to begin with of the Fiji Waters. So I've done my thin first coat, pop that in to cure, and then I'm coming in and applying a second coat, and this is where you can really see how gorgeous this colour is. This is definitely a colour that I've got a lot of use out of this spring, and I reckon I'll get a lot of use out of it in the summer as well. So once I've applied that second coat of colour, I'm popping that in to cure for 30 seconds. And then again, because we're going to be doing some hand painting, I'm coming in and applying my layer of matte top coat. This colour, by the way, you shall see it in a moment, it looks absolutely gorgeous matte. Curing that matte top coat for 30 seconds and just look how gorgeous the colour is matte. I would happily wear a full set of Fiji Waters, especially with a matte top coat. Moving on to the design we're going to do on this nail, I'm going to be taking my striped liner brush again and coconut, and we're going to draw like a white picket fence style. So I'm coming in and I'm going across the nail doing straight lines as straight as I can get them. So again, like I said when we were doing the tree branches, I let the brush do a lot of the work for me. So I'm loading it up with a small amount of gel polish, but I'm really making sure that that gel polish gets through the bristles. And then you'll see here, I place down the tip of the brush and then let it flow across the nail. So I'm allowing that brush to do all of the work for me, and I'm just guiding it where I want it to go. And it created quite crisp and straight lines, to be honest. Like I said, I'm not overly experienced with hand painting, but I was quite impressed with how straight those lines turned out. Then we're going to do exactly the same again, but with our lines going the opposite way. So again, I like to just apply a small amount of gel polish at a time, because then that way I can come in with more if it's needed. Where I find if I apply too much to begin with, I end up creating a too thick line, or I end up with excess gel polish on the brush and it just creating a mess. So for me personally, I find less is more, and to just work with a little bit at a time. I wanted to thicken up the top line, so I'm just coming over that with a second coat of colour just to make it ever so slightly thicker, and then popping that in to cure. Then on this now, we're going to create those same cherry blossoms again, but this time I wanted to do them with the lighter pink base and the flamingo swirled in them. So I'm coming in with the baby pink, drawing on that rough uneven circular shape. I didn't want to add too many because I didn't want it to look over the top, so I'm just adding on a couple of larger ones to begin with, and then I'm going to do some slightly smaller ones. Just cleaning off my brush on the palette because the colours I'm working with are all quite similar, so I didn't need to worry about wiping my brush off on any alcohol. But if I'm switching between two different colours, I will wipe my brush onto one of the Kiki London alcohol pads just to make sure I get all of that gel polish out before I move on to the next colour. So once I'd done those two larger flowers, I did pop them in for a 10-second flash cure, just so I didn't smudge them, because I wasn't sure 100% on what I was doing on this design. So if you ever find that, that's when it's a great time to pop your nail in for a flash cure, because then if you make a mistake, you can wipe off what you've done without ruining the ones that you are happy with. Like that flower there, for example, I wasn't happy with that, so I've just wiped it off with one of the Kiki London alcohol pads. I always like to keep a couple of them on my desk handy, so that when I'm doing gel polish designs, I can easily pick one up if I decide there's something on the nail I don't like. Again, I'm doing the same technique that I did on the previous nail, so I'm painting on the baby pink and leaving that wet, and then swirling the flamingo into the wet baby pink just to create that marble effect. And then I'm coming in and just dotting on some little dots that will be smaller flowers. And I'm really loving these soft pastel matte spring designs at the moment. They have a bit of a vintage and Cath Kidston vibe to them, and I really like that. I think it's quite pretty, especially for the spring summer season. I then decided to switch to the striped liner brush and take a little bit of coconut on that and add some really thin lines to the centres of the flowers, just to give the flowers a little bit more definition, because although the flowers are really small, so you don't overly see that they're a flower or see the intricate details of a flower, just adding those little lines makes it look a little bit more finished. I then popped those in to cure for 30 seconds, and that's the main 3 nails of this design finished. Just how pretty do they look? So I'm then going to come in with the beautiful Romantic Spark. This is one of the new colours from the Kiki London Spring Bling collection. If you haven't checked out that collection, then I will leave a link in the description box below to the swatch video, because the glitter gel polishes are absolutely amazing. Now, whenever I do a set like this on myself or a client where I've got a lot of heavy nail art on the 3 nails, I like to keep the thumb and the little finger quite simple. So I decided I would do 2 2 full nails of the Romantic Spark. So I've applied that first coat of colour. Now the glitter gel polishes can feel a little bit thick because they're crammed with glitter. So you kind of really want to work that colour in to make it a nice thin coat. And then I do like to come in and do a second coat of colour if I haven't put a base colour down, just because when you're doing a full nail of it, that's going to really make those glitters pop. So once I've done that second coat, I've popped that in to cure for 30 seconds, and just look how beautiful they look. Romantic Spark is such a beautiful, pretty colour. Now I did decide that I wanted to have this full set matte, so I decided I was even going to matte top coat the 2 glitter gel polishes. I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to like this, but I thought I'll do them all matte, and then if I don't like the glitters matte, I can always come over them with a glossy top coat. But in all honesty, I really loved the matte effect over the sparkly gel polishes. I think it really tied in well because the other 3 nails were matte too, but you'll see it further along once I have cured them. It just gives them a really soft shimmer, which kind of fitted with the whole vibe for the set. But if you didn't want to do them matte, then of course you could leave them glossy, because they do look absolutely stunning with that shiny top coat. So I've applied a thin coat of the matte top coat to all of the nails, making sure to seal in the free edges, especially if you're working on a client. And I'm then going to pop these in my Kiki London lamp to cure for 30 seconds. And this, guys, is the finished result. So just look at those sparkles with a matte top coat. It gives off a completely different effect, which I absolutely loved. But let me know in the comments below, did you prefer them matte or glossy? I really hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, then please don't forget to give it a thumbs up or leave us a comment below. If you're watching and you're not already subscribed, I'd absolutely love it if you hit that subscribe button. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. Lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.